comes down to talent. The NBA, more than any other sport to me, always comes down to the players that are playing the game. The talent that's out there. Offense beats defense all the time, in my opinion.
The,
In basketball, I think
the
most.
only way you could have prevented tonight was by trading for Harden.
That's the one thing I think that we said before the trade was made, whereas you're almost making the trade to play some defense. Uh,
Yes.
uh, not defense on the court necessarily, but defense, preventing the Nets from getting him. Now, who knows how that would have played out? I don't know what the Celtics, how close they were, if they, I've
We've
heard
talked a lot about the
rumors.
Miles Turner. We've talked a lot about the Miles Turner thing this year, and rightfully so. I feel like we haven't talked enough about that what if of Harden because Goodman and us have started throwing around Brown trades, and we'll discuss in the offseason like what they could get for certain guys. At this point, when you look at what's going to be available going forward, and you think about what's been available for the Celtics stars, it would have been hard to beat. I don't know what else they would have had to throw in there. Maybe multiple picks. Maybe that's where they got a little scared and hung up about that. But Brown for Harden on the surface, now that you look back on it and what it would have meant for Boston and what it would have meant for Brooklyn, still kind of hanging in the middle of that East there. If the Celtics transform their roster by getting Turner and even not getting Turner, but flipping Brown for Harden, I think a lot of people can imagine a much different team this year because that passer that we talk about, that's who Harden is. He's one of the best passers in the NBA. He would have been able to get Tatum the ball. He would have probably been able to help out some of these young guys. And it stinks because I
Yeah.
love Jalen. I love where Jalen's going, but Jalen isn't necessarily the solution to the problems that they have right now.
No, and it's a great point because you talk about what are the Celtics missing? We talked about earlier in the show, a playmaker, right?
Yeah.
Harden kind of came in there and unlocked. Kyrie's able to do way more off the ball. We already know what Durant's capable of, and Harden's before he went down with an injury, he was putting up MVP argument to some extent. The way they were playing with him, sort of manning the position there, being a bit of a quarterback out there. So certainly, and I think so many people who maybe don't watch Harden as much, outside of the highlights, they think that, he holds on to the ball forever, takes a 3-year drive to the hoop, gets foul, goes to the line. They don't really maybe understand how good of a playmaker that he really was until maybe they saw more of him, on this Brooklyn team.
That's the thing, because we were all on the show saying no way, and it's so crazy to think about now.
Right.
But when you remember what was going on then, it was what he was in Houston, added on with the fat suit, added on with how he was acting around the team, and just
Yeah.
how angry his team. Do you remember how mad John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins and those guys were at him? And imagining bringing that into the
Really mad.
Celtics situation with like how good Brown and Tatum were looking. Remember, Brown was like the number one scoring guy in the NBA to start this year. It was just such a different time that you almost wouldn't have even imagined doing that at that time. But you kind of had to take the blinders off to what was going on then and look at what you had. And I almost wonder if the Kyrie trade and how that went dissuaded Ainge from doing a similar trade for Harden because it was almost the same kind of situation. A disgruntled guy who definitely wanted to come to Boston, but it wasn't his first choice. And you're giving up a lot for him, and he could leave in a couple of years. And then at that point, you siphon one more asset and a very great player for what could ultimately just become a wash of 2 years. So I get why they didn't do it. Now looking back on how it went, all things being equal, it could have saved the team this year.
I think it would have been completely different situations for sure on the Celtics and on the Nets. That's one less, stud player that they have. I think, Danny had a lot more to think about when it comes to trading, Brown in this case because I think that he, when it comes down to, Kyrie Irving for Isaiah Thomas, yeah, looking back, wow, that kind of maybe backfired a little bit. But Isaiah Thomas was hurt. We know how his career's kind of been since that trade, and I know everyone, all Celtics fans love Isaiah Thomas, but I think that was kind of a no-brainer on his end. Whereas this was like you're really parting with a player in Jaylen Brown that could be all-star for years to come, could be a centerpiece of this team. So there was more to think about, but I think there's a lot more. Put it this way, I think there's a lot more people today who would make that trade than there were when it was being floated around to start the season.
100%. And even with how much people love Brown, and I know we have a lot of
Had a
Brown,
good season too. Brown had a great season. So,
yeah, but
but
we
yeah,
all know that
but
even if Brown was
hard. I mean, Jason Tatum said it himself. Harden's a top five player in the NBA. He just said it, on a podcast this week. So that should tell you right there what he thinks about playing with a guy like Harden. You know?
Harden was an MVP candidate when he
Yeah.
was rolling midway through this year. Even on the team he was on, like with all the talent around him, he was going to get a serious look at that before he got hurt. And he's going to continue to thrive in that environment going forward. And your point was so right, Jimmy. This is true for Philly too. If Philly ends up getting mowed over by Brooklyn in these finals or whenever they'll meet, that defense factor, keeping him away from Brooklyn, not
Hmm.
allowing them to do that. And the fact that Brooklyn got him for so little, a
Yeah.
couple role players, good role players, guys that they miss,
Yeah. I
7
mean,
picks that they don't give a
Levert's
damn about, but
right.
they have this great core and still a ton of great role players around them. Why didn't Houston ask for Joe Harris?
It's a great player. I don't know. Maybe they didn't think Harris was a guy that they could build around. I don't know. I don't know if Houston's the team that we should be trying to build. Follow their lead when it comes to building a team. I think they're going to be in the dumps for a while over there. But yeah, I mean that trade certainly would have completely, if it goes to Boston or I know Philly was a real popular landing spot. It just changes everything in the East, and it makes Brooklyn more human, right? I mean, because right now we're talking about as long as Brooklyn stays healthy, like it's hard to envision a team beating them, especially out in the East, anyways. So you take that away immediately, and the playing field is much more level. So, and I mean, Harden in Boston, I mean, you can't tell me that wouldn't be an electric factory. Fans wouldn't be able to get behind him.
Fans would have fallen in
The
love
beard
game
and
number 1 when he scored 50 points.
Harden and
It wouldn't have
Tatum,
taken
going,
long.
yeah, going back and forth like that. I mean, that'd be
And that's where you look at Ainge again. Ainge has to be the guy to look beyond the fans and the idiots like me and the people who are hyping up Brown to that level and say, this is James Harden we're talking about here. Let's
right.
get this done. And
Which
it's almost amazing that he didn't do it. And that says to me that the price was even higher than Brown. It had to be like Brown and 3 first and Rob or something like that. Just an astronomical asking price, I'd imagine. Because again, why didn't Houston do Harden for Simmons? I think it's because
right.
Brooklyn was willing to do 7 first, and they were just obsessed with getting those picks, even though who knows what picks could end up becoming.
That's the risk, and you have a choice where if you really think one of those 7 picks or whatever they are gonna be better than a Jaylen Brown someday, and that maybe you're not ready to have, maybe you don't think that a Jaylen Brown's gonna be enough to really do a whole lot for you, and he might be a guy that walks in a few years, and if you don't trade him before he walks, then you kind of you're the centerpiece of your trade, you says see you later. So I don't know how much that played into it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if Danny Ainge had a legitimate chance at Harden and, said thanks but no thanks, or didn't think that he was winning the deal and for some reason, then
Remember, Harden,
another criticism.
Boston,
Definitely,
Boston
yeah,
was
that was the case.
Boston was on Harden's list. That we know for certain. And who knows if that means he would have stayed beyond the 2 years, but he would have been fine going there at this moment.
And you know what?
So,
The 2 years in Boston, those are 2 years where you are a NBA Finals contender. So
yep.
you take that, right? Anytime you can put yourself in an NBA Finals contention, you do it. I mean, I don't know if anyone who follows the Celtics thinks that they're a Finals contender next season based on a roster that looks very similar to this one. And part of the reason is because Brooklyn will have their guys coming back, and Philly's playing a lot better than they were playing last season. So again, now you're trying to find another avenue to put yourself.
And now you get the Knicks. The Knicks on the rise.
Yeah,
And then you
and the
got
Bucks. We
the
didn't even mention
the
the Bucks.
Hawks.
I mean, you've got a lot of teams that are getting better. My Pacers. Who knows?
No, I mean, even without the Pacers, you can legitimately have, in terms of trajectory, 6 teams moving ahead of Boston at that spot.
Heat will
And
maybe be better too. Who knows?
and even if Brown and Tatum keep growing, those other teams are going to keep growing too. Trae Young and
Yeah.
Julius Randle and that group there, and they're going to probably get another guy at some point here. And who knows how the drafts go in coming years? I mean, this, like, it's tough to say at this point, but this really could be like we could have seen Boston's best chance to win a championship come and go within the last 2 or 3 years, and there might not be that opportunity again in this Brown and Tatum stint here, which is like the darkest, scariest path that you could go down here in terms of what the
I'm
next
not
2,
going
3 years
down
are
there.
gonna look like.
I'm not going
But,
to.
but no, it's possible. You have to at least acknowledge that it's possible, right?
Hi guys, Cedric Maxwell here. I want to take a minute to tell you about Marigold Medical. I'm used to keeping my body in great shape, but with arthritis, even the most simple everyday tasks became unbearable. As soon as I called Marigold Medical, I knew I was in good hands. No drugs, no surgery, just an experienced team of caring professionals that wanted to get me back to doing the things I love. Make the call to Marigold Medical and get back to pain-free life.